It is a great pleasure for me every year to come back and to see NIIT growing before my eyes. It was a greenfield university. There was nothing here to begin with. And I have seen it grow over the last decade into one of the most beautiful campuses. It's getting greener every time I come. It's getting fresh. And particularly coming from Delhi, it is a great relief to be able to breathe at least. Because in Delhi now, the latest catchword is, do come to Delhi, it's so lovely here, only don't drink the water and don't breathe the air. So, Delhi is becoming an impossible place, and it's so nice to drive here and to see this, and what Rajesh just told us about the way that this university is growing day by day, and the new dimensions that are being added, both environmental and professional. So I'd like at the outset to congratulate Rajesh, you, Professor Rao, your whole team, the faculty, the students, for this growth, and for how the NU is now grown into a full-fledged university, beginning to give honorary degrees, and the 100% placement I thought was extremely impressive, because one of our problems is we have large numbers of students, but we don't have anything for them to do. And therefore, a university like this, a technical university in a way, but which has added humanities, which can promote young people from here to get into creative activity. I think that is tremendously important, because there is nothing more depressing or more irritating than having educated people hanging around and not knowing what to do, which is one of our major problems. So I think that when you talk of the future of India, we have to so adjust our educational structure as to be able to prepare young men and women to get into some kind of creative jobs. Perhaps not all of them at this level. Even at the other levels, we need more and more. For example, it's now clear that Europe is aging. Japan is aging. They don't have people there to look after the elderly. Now we produce thousands of nurses, for example, or attendants. Why can we not organize programs whereby tens of thousands of Indians go abroad, go not only to the Gulf, where they're already going, but to Europe, to countries that are aging? Because the Indians are generally welcomed. Other communities are not so much welcomed as the Indians are. So if we somehow or the other try and work out a proper placement abroad also, like our nurses all go to Kerala. I'm sure, just the other day I met somebody from Japan who said that now we just do not have enough people to look after our elderly people. People are aging, young people do not want to look after them, there are not enough of them. So that's just one example of how our educational structure can be reoriented towards this. And I'm very impressed that you are able to have a 100% placement. I think that's really very good. Now, the topic given to me today, the growing relevance of Vedanta. Let me say that we live in an age of great turmoil, tumult and transition, with the old collapsing and the new struggling to be born, and we find ourselves precariously poised between a disappearing past and an uncertain future. All over the world, it's not only India, the whole structure of the human race is beginning to change. Largely, of course, because of technology, but also because of the very skewed income and power structures around the world. So lots and lots of tensions are growing, and at a time like this, we need fresh impetus. And we look into our scriptures not in order to go back. I want to stress that. Because people talk of golden ages, whether they were golden or not, I'm not sure. They may have been golden for a small group of people, not for everybody. We've got to see what we can gain for us today. How does it help us today? Because any scripture that is merely archival then becomes interesting for PhD scholars and so on. It has no immediate relevance or impact. Whereas I hold that Vedanta, and I'll come and explain what Vedanta is something which has a great deal of relevance today. Well, let me say in Hinduism you have whole richness of scriptures. There's so many scriptures that it's extraordinary, the sheer size of the scriptural corpus. But among them, the Vedas are considered to be the supreme wisdom. If you were to compare the Vedas to the Himalayas, when you fly, for example, from here to Calcutta, you fly parallel to the Himalayas. If the Vedas are the Himalayas, then those great peaks that you see, they are the Upanishads. The Upanishads are the essence of the wisdom of the Vedas. They are known as the Vedanta because they come at the end of the Vedic collection, and also because they are the summum bonum of the Vedic structures. So whereas the Vedas have these beautiful hymns to various deities and all, it is in the Upanishads that you find the supreme wisdom. And the Upanishads are dialogues. Please remember that the Indic religions are dialogic religions. The Abrahamic religions are revelatory religions. There's a revelation. It's there, take it or don't take it. But the Indic religions are dialogues. The Upanishads are dialogues, questions, sharp questions between teachers. The Buddha dialogued with his followers for 50 years. He walked up and down North India. Mahavira did the same. So Upanishads are dialogues between a rishi, a man who has achieved a spiritual realization, and one or more students. And they are sitting in the Himalayas somewhere, either on the banks of a river or in a mountain ashram, and they are talking about the ultimate problems. Who are we? Where do we come from? What is the meaning of life? And where are we going? So that is what the Upanishads are. You must remember that they are these very exquisite dialogues. There are a large number of them. I'm not going into the details, but there are 11 major Upanishads. And I suggest that many people shy away from the Upanishads because they think they're very difficult. They're not, in fact. The Upanishads are, in fact, much clearer than the Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita is a more complicated text. But the Upanishads, in fact, are the direct realization. And the word Upanishad has two meanings. Upanishad can mean either sitting around. For example, if I'm sitting here and 4 or 5 people, this becomes an Upanishad, sitting around. And Upanishad also means a secret teaching, a teaching which is to be given only at that stage to the students. And in the Upanishads, we meet a large number of very interesting teachers and very interesting students. Because the students are as important as the teachers. The questions that are asked really bring forth the wisdom. For example, there's a question in the Mundaka Upanishad where Shaunaka, a wealthy householder, goes to the Rishi and says, "What is that by knowing which everything becomes known? Kasminno bhagavo vigyate sarvamidam vigyatam bhavati." What a remarkable question. What is it by knowing which everything becomes known? So the Guru answers, then he answers that there are two kinds of wisdom, dve vidya, veditavya. There's the higher knowledge and the lower knowledge. And the lower knowledge is what we call the knowledge of the 100,000 things around us. It is the higher knowledge, the knowledge of the divine, that really is the knowledge. So these are the sorts of questions that come. Nachiketa asks Yama, why do we die? What happens after we die? You're the god of death, you tell me what happens. So these sort of questions, you wouldn't find these sort of questions, I don't think, in many other scriptures. Fundamental questions. And they are full of wisdom and all, but I'll just try and explain very briefly with a few seminal concepts about the Vedanta. The first concept, as the young lady mentioned, who was introducing, she almost made my speech, by the way. the first is the concept, a very important concept, of the unity of all existence, what is known as the Brahman. Brahmevidam amritam purustat brahmamasha brahma dakshinaschotarena adaschordhamna prastitam brahmevidam vishwamidam varishtam. This magnificent universe. And again mark, not this tiny speck of dust that we call planet Earth, but the billions and billions of galaxies in the unbounded universe around us. Our rishis realized Anantakoti Brahmanda. If you look at one galaxy as a Brahmanda, because it looks a bit like an egg if you look at a photograph of the galaxy, Anantakoti Brahmanda, infinite millions of galaxies. I mean, you talk of science today, it is only now, in our own lifetimes, that we've begun to see through various technological measures what the universe is like. And so we are ready to accept the universe. We are not something that shocks us. No, what are they saying? What are they saying? Some people get shocked. We are not. We are quite happy with it. In fact, the deeper they go into the universe, the more this becomes. So we talk of this huge universe. And another one, a universe which is Anadi Ananta, without beginning and without end, which is the motto that I gave you here. They even talk of a Swambhu, a self-created universe. Perhaps you do not need a creator. That's now they're coming around. The universe may have created itself. So these sort of astounding concepts, which now are all beginning to astound us now, are to be found in the concept of the all-pervasive Brahman. Huge number of galaxies and time, vast aeons of time. I remember in some theologies there were heated discussions as to whether God created the world in 2000 BC or in 7000 BC, heated discussions and all. We realized that this is something which has gone back millions and millions of years. So the whole concept of infinite space and infinite time, which are now, we're just now beginning to grasp, these are found in the concept of the Brahman, the all-pervasive Brahman. So that is the first basic concept. Today quantum mechanics or whatever is beginning to probe into it. Then the second concept is of the Atman. The Atman is the spark of that divine within each one of us. That's very important. And with each one of us, not with any particular caste or any creed or any religion, but everyone. Ishvara sarva bhutana hriddeshe tishtati. The Lord resides in the heart of all beings. Just look at the glory of that idea. There were many ways we say, no, this is our clan, this is our thing, those people are unbelievers or those people are this. The Upanishads, rishis say no. Every individual, everywhere, every individual has a spark of the divine, the Atman. So you have the all-pervasive Brahman, you have the divinity inherent in each human being, the Atman. And joining these two is the real goal of life. Joining the Brahman and the Atman. The process of joining and the methodology of joining is known as yoga. Yoga comes from the same root as the English word to yoke, to join. Yoga is the methodology and the philosophy of joining the Atman and the Brahman. And there are four main paths of yoga. Because, yoga now is reduced only to some physical exercise. They are fine. I mean, if you can stand on your heads, congratulations. I can't. And I don't believe that standing on your head is a condition precedent for spiritual illumination. But nonetheless, so let me come to some aspects of yoga. The first is the Jnana Yoga, the way of the mind, the discrimination between the real and the unreal. Like Plato, for example, in the West, contemplating, trying to purify, clarify your mind, trying to meditate and trying to get to the core of what there is within you. That is Jnana Yoga, reading the scriptures, discussing, talking with gurus and all. So the Jnana Yoga is the way of wisdom, the way of the mind. And that is one of the important ways of realizing the unity between the Atman and the Brahman. The second path is the Bhakti Yoga, which is the way of the heart. Bhakti Yoga is the way of the heart where unless your emotion flows along with your intellect, you will not be able to move on the spiritual path. You need to fall in love with God, like Mansoor fell in love with God, or Rumi was in love with God, or St. John on the Cross was in love with God, or St. Teresa of Avila was in love with God, or the Nayanmars in Tamil Nadu were in love with Shiva, or the Alvars are in love with Vishnu, or Meera, or Tulsi, the Bhakti, the heart, or the great Vaishnava tradition from Orissa. All of these are the Bhakti Yoga. That is why you have this bewildering variety. Many people are astounded. इतने देवी देवता कैसे हैं आपके? The reason is different forms may appeal to different people. I happen to be worshipping Shiva. Somebody else may be worshipping Vishnu. And you can even worship without any form. You can just look inwards in the Gyan Yoga and concentrate on a flame, and there you are. But Bhakti Yoga is an important way. Devotion. If you see, for example, Hazrat Nizamuddin and the Awliya Hamare kya, there's the way Khusro, Amir Khusro, and the way there's bhajans. I mean, there is love for the Guru. You can fall in love with the Guru, you can fall in love with the Divine. So the heart has to open. And that is one of the ways in which you can unify the inner and the outer. So you have the Jnana Yoga, the way of the mind. You have the Bhakti Yoga, the way of the heart. Then you have the Karma Yoga, the way of the arms, the way of action. Karma Yoga is not just any karma. Everybody is doing some action or the other. But Karma Yoga is action dedicated to the Divine. There is a verse in the Gita, Yata Pritvirbhutanam yen sarvamidam tatam sa karmanatam abhyarcha siddhim vindri manava. That divine power that permeates the universe, if we can worship it through our karma, siddhim vindri manava, man moves towards perfection. So Karma Yoga is also an important thing, because there was some view that Vedanta only means going off into the Himalayas and sitting in an ashram and meditating. That is one of the ways. Not that there are some ashrams still left, but there also the whole air in the Himalayas is getting polluted now the way we are doing it. So the Karma Yoga is very important. Karma Yoga is the way of Martha, shall we say, if there are any Christians, as against the way of Mary was the way of contemplation, the way of Martha was the way of action. Or the way, shall we say, of Swami Vivekananda, or the way of Mother Teresa, serving the poor, helping the people who are unwell. Really, that service is Karma Yoga. And we believe that by Karma Yoga also, if you are really devoted, let me tell you a story of the greatest temple probably in India is the Thanjavur temple, the Brihadishwara temple in Thanjavur. And it was being built by Rajaraja Chola 1,000 years ago. And he went out to inspect the work. And he came across a man who was cutting stone. He said, "What are you doing?" He said, "Sir, I'm cutting stone." He went a little further. There was another man doing the same thing. He asked, "What are you doing?" He said, "I'm earning a living." He went to the third man who was doing exactly the same thing. He said, "What are you doing?" He said, "Sir, I'm building a great temple." It depends on what attitude is your work. The first one was just tamasic. He was just mechanically cutting. The second one was rajasic. At least he had some goal. The third one realized that what he was doing was part of a great enterprise. And a Karma Yoga is only if you're involved in some great enterprise of serving humanity, serving your fellow beings. There's so poverty in this world, in our own country. There are millions children go to bed without a full meal. There are millions who shiver in the winter, who sweat in the summer, who are drenched in the monsoon, who don't have any place to live. So it's all very fine to talk of high and mighty philosophy, but unless you're doing something to help, what is your Karma Yoga? You've got to do something. So you have Jnana Yoga, the way of the mind. You have Bhakti Yoga, the way of the heart. We have Karma Yoga, the way of the arms, and we have Raja Yoga, the way of the breath. I breathe, therefore I am. Not only I think, therefore I am. I breathe, therefore I am. Breathing is the fundamental thing that everybody does from even before birth. And we believe that in our breath or in our own body there are powers, there are possibilities that can be properly organized. That within our own body we have the power and the glory and the wisdom to be able to directly confront the divine. I'm not going into all the various types of pranayama and various things and all. There are many, many types. There are many gurus. There are lots of good gurus, but there are lots of fraud gurus also, so you better be careful. But the frauds are all behind bars. Most of them are behind bars now. But gradually, but that doesn't mean all gurus are like that. So you see, you have these four. Look at the integrated nature of the philosophy. It deals with the intellectual, the emotional, the physical, and the psychic, the dimensions of the human body. And you've got to participate in all four, by the way. They are not mutually exclusive. In this day and age, my view is that we have to participate in some way or the other in all the four yogas. We have to do some intellectual study, meditation. We've got to do some devotion to whatever appeals to us. We've got to do some creative work dedicated to the divine, and we've got to try and see what we can do with our inner breath in our life. So those are the four paths of joining the Brahman and the Atman. That's one part of what I want to say today. Now I'll come to three other concepts which are in our Shastras, mainly in the Upanishads, which again are becoming more and more. These four, as I said, are relevant paths. They are not paths that are irrelevant. The four yogas are relevant to us today. We can use them, we have to use them. Therefore, the emerging relevance of the Vedanta. Now I'll come to three other concepts. The first, the remarkable concept of the world as a family. Ayam nija paroveti gananam lagu chetasam udar charita namatu vasudeva kutumbakam. This is mine, that is yours, is a small and narrow way of looking at the world. Udar charita namatu. For those of the higher consciousness, Vasudha eva kutumbakam. The world itself is a family. Just look at these people sitting in the Himalayas, alone or with two or three. How they had the capacity to have these sort of concepts. Not only infinite time, infinite space, not only the whole potential of development, but this thing, the world is a family. Now, we are very far from a family, as you know today. The world is totally fractured and fragmented. But in the ultimate analysis, when nationalisms will have been transcended, unless we come finally to the conclusion that the human race is one, we're going to destroy ourselves. Which is why Arthur Koestler, the European philosopher, he has a theory that man is a programmed creature for self-destruction. He says there's not an adequate link in the human cortex between the thinking and the acting principle. Therefore, we're bound sooner or later to blow ourselves up, or to destroy the environment to such an extent that we can't live. I think that is coming true now. The way things are going, with all our technical development and everything, I think the human race is in greater danger today as a race than it ever was before. Because of globalization of technology, globalization of the weapons of mass destruction, and globalization of environmental destruction. So the world as a family may seem a very idealistic and far-fetched concept, but it is ultimately, I think, a concept that we have to do. When what Tennyson calls the Parliament of Man, the Federation of the World. We thought we were moving towards that. At the end of the last century, we thought we were moving towards globalization because, things were developing. But then we were hit by two black swan events. I do not know how many of you here know what a black swan event is. I'm not going to ask you to raise your hands. A black swan event, there's a book called The Black Swan. A black swan event is an entirely unexpected event with momentous consequences. That's a black swan event. Because it comes out, it's very interesting. Everybody said, no, swans are always white. And they said, no, I've seen a black swan. There's a black swan somewhere. And suddenly a black swan appears and everybody is astounded. So a black swan event defined as an entirely unexpected event with momentous consequences. And we've been hit in this decade by two such black swan events. One was Brexit. Who would have thought that the British, who Gandhiji called a nation of shopkeepers, who was supposed to be very sensible and all, who would have thought that they would suddenly commit suicide by opting for leaving Brexit without knowing what it implies? That poor Theresa May, I must say, she deserves a couple of prayers from us. वो बेचारी कोशिश बड़ी कर रही है, रोज रोती है, कभी कुछ कहती है, कभी कुछ कहती है. Everybody is resigning. I mean, the whole thing is in a chaos. The European Union is in chaos and Britain is in a chaos. So that was totally unexpected. Why did Cameron offer a referendum? He needn't have. He's over clever. Referendum, never thinking that he'd lose. He needn't have done that referendum. Remember that. Everybody forgets Cameron. Cameron was the Asli Mulzim. He was the one who started this whole thing and got caught. So now they don't know what to do. Na wo nikal pa rahe hain, na wo reh pa rahe hain. This is a terrible. So that was a black swan event. Suddenly everything. And the second black swan event, of course, was the election of President Trump. Who would have thought that the oldest democracy in the world and the greatest nation in the world, the land of the free and the land of democracy and the land of liberty, would elect a man like President. I'm not going to go into further details. It's self-evident. So these two events between them have shattered the movement towards globalization. The Paris Agreement, which was such an extraordinary event, this man has just withdrawn from the Paris Agreement. And do you know what the implications of withdrawing from the Paris Agreement on the human environment are? That is definitely ensuring environmental destruction. He's shattered the alliances. He goes around cancelling treaties and telling people who hit the trust, you're a fool, you're a bad man. How could you say that? For God's sake, I mean, you don't say that. But that's what he says. So this is a black swan event. So these two black swans, the double whammy, ta-ta, between them, the whole movement towards globalization is wobbling. But anyhow, what brings me to this is the concept of the world as a family. At some point in time, I submit that we either blow ourselves up, which is more likely, or we come around to the concept of the world as a family. Then another concept, really tremendously important. Ekam sat vipraha bahuda vadanti. 4 words. The truth is one. The wise call it by many names. The essential unity of all religions. What a remarkable concept. We do not say, no, ours is the only way. Whoever is moving in their own way towards the divine is to be welcomed. Because the divine cannot be confined within a single avatar or a single syllogism. How can we do that? If the divine is the divine, there are billions and billions of galaxies. God knows where the divine is descended, in what form, what way. Who are we, creatures on a tiny speck of dust, to turn around and say, no, mine is the only way to salvation. And if you don't go my way, you will boil in oil or you will suffer in, I don't know, whatever, something terrible will happen to you. We can't say that. We are not qualified to say that. I can say, yes, for me, my path is the best. I'm quite happy with that path. But I cannot say that because you don't follow that path, you can be blown up or you can be decapitated or tortured. You can't say that. And that is what is happening. Religion, which is supposed, religara, the word religara means to bring together. Religion, which is supposed to bring people together, has become one of the main causes of disaster in the world today. Look around you. Look at the fanaticism, the fundamentalism that has grown in almost all the religions of the world, and the chaos that it has created. Why? Because I think that my way is the best and you must follow it. Let everybody follow their own path, for God's sake. If you believe in the divine. So, ekam sat vipra, there's another one. Yatha nyadya sandamana samudre astam gachanti nam rupe vyaya. Tatha vidvan nam rupat vimukta. Parat param purusham mukta idipyu. As rivers and streams arise in different parts of the country, but finally flow into the same ocean, so do all the great religions, all the mutts, all the paths arise differently. Hinduism was born in the mountains of the Himalayas. Islam was born in the burning desert sands of Arabia. Born differently. But ultimately all religions, if they are genuine, have to go into the same stream. Because you cannot have different divinities for each religion. How many divinities are you going to have? If there is, by definition, I'm not going into, some people don't believe in a divinity at all, that's a different matter. You're atheist, fair enough. That's also one form of approach. But if you do believe in some higher power, you cannot divide it into, अच्छा ये इस्लाम के लिए ये भगवान है, मेरे लिए ये है, सिखों के लिए ये है. It doesn't make any sense. Therefore, this concept of the essential unity of all religions is a tremendously important concept. We just had the 7th Parliament of World Religions in Toronto earlier this month. It started, if you remember, 1893, the first Parliament of World Religions in Chicago, which was where Swami Vivekananda made such a dramatic impact. Many of you must have read about that, and about his great speech that he made in the opening. 1893 was the first. Then in the last century, many interfaith organizations grew up. I'm heading one of them called the Temple of India, Temple of Understanding India Foundation. And then in 1993, the Chicago group said, let's restart the parliament. So the first parliament after that was held in Chicago in 1993, exactly 100 years later. Then the second was held in Cape Town, South Africa. The third was held in Barcelona, then one was held in Melbourne, one was held in Salt Lake City, and Toronto is the 7th, which is just held. These are interfaith movements, striving to bring people from different religious faiths together. Not a Shastrarth. The Shastrarth was meant to prove the superiority of one philosophy. That's not it. Simply to try and understand, at least the basics. Unfortunately, because we are so terrified of talking of religion, our educational system has totally boycotted any spiritual truths. So you can do a whole course from pre-kindergarten to post-PhD in India without once even hearing that the Upanishads exist, far less reading them. So this is the problem. We've thrown the baby out along with the bathwater. So that's the problem of religion. But the concept, I'm talking as Vedantic concepts, essential unity of all religions, these are becoming increasingly relevant. Because we are seeing that religious wars, which we thought were over, have restarted. Look at what's happened in West Asia. They've destroyed Iraq, they've destroyed Syria, they've destroyed country after country there. So this is and the last point which I want to make, which I think is also increasingly relevant. Bahujana Sukhaya, Bahujana Hitaya. The welfare of the many, the happiness of the many. There's a beautiful slok. Sarvepi Sukhina Santu, Sarve Santu Niramaya, Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu, Ma Kashtit Dukha Bhag Bhuget. Sarvepi Sukhina, may all beings be happy. Sarvepi Sukhina, Sarve Santu Niramaya, may all beings be free of illness. Sarve Santu, Sarve Bhadram Pashyantu, let all beings witness beautiful sights. Ma Kashtit Dukha Bhag Bhuget, may no one have to suffer. Is there a better definition of socialism, I ask you? Do we have Marxist socialism? They killed billions of people, that is their socialism. China, 3 crore people suffered in the big leap forward. Stalin starved 3 crore people to death. That is not socialism. This is a spiritual idea. May all beings, the welfare of all, the benefit of, that is what we are all about. That's what every political party says it is going to do. So unless we have that concept in our mind, that the very last, unto this last, as John Ruskin says, that everybody must be, this involves our health system, our education. I'm not going into the technology of it, I'm simply going with the ideas. So what I've told you today is, first of all, the concept of the Brahman, the all-pervasive Brahman, infinite space, infinite time, the concept of the Atman, the Brahman, reflection or the spark of Brahman in each individual, the fourfold path of yoga to join them, the Jnana Yoga, the Bhakti Yoga, the Karma Yoga, and the Raja Yoga, the concept of the world as a family, the concept of the essential unity of all religions, and the concept of the welfare of the many, the happiness of the many. I would submit that these concepts today are even more relevant than they were when they were originally articulated. Because at that time they were just sitting in small ashrams, they couldn't do it. Today we've become global. Technology has given us the tools to try and achieve some of these goals. So that, to my mind, is what Vedanta teaches us. And ultimately, I would urge that above all of us must be on some kind of a spiritual path. Whatever you prefer, whatever you like, whatever your profession. Don't just skim over the surface of life. I know so many people, they've been skimming across the surface without once looking deep within. And before you know, life is past. Kalaha kridati gacchati ayu, gone, you're finished. Life is not a meaningless journey from the womb to the tomb. Life is an extraordinary opportunity for a spiritual and intellectual adventure. And I would like all of you, particularly the young people, to have that sense of adventure. The fact that you're born as human beings, the fact that you have your mind, your brain, you can think, you can act, you can try and go deeper into consciousness. That is the cutting edge of science today, as you know, is consciousness research, the mind-brain relationship. You can map the brain and what happens in enhanced states of consciousness. So do have a path. It's not easy. Let me tell you, the path is difficult, but we have to go across that path. And I will end with a quotation from the Kathopanishad. It's a very famous quotation, which exhorts us to awake and arise and to walk across a razor-edged path towards our goal. And our goal is a new consciousness, a new India, a new world. Uttishtata jagrata prapya varan nibodhata khurasya dhara nishita durgtaya durgam pathastat kavayo vedanti. Thank you.